Rudolf Kreutzer wrote his Etudes for violin around 1796. When he wrote these, what he had in mind was to show his students a really good basis and foundation for playing the violin. Fortunately, these etudes are wonderful to play on the viola. They really, really help us form our foundation, and they help us to get a great feel for our instrument. Today I want to go over a few of the etudes and talk about how I go about practicing them and what are some of the things that we can get out of playing each etude. So I'm going to try to get through about 6 or 8 of them and talk about how to do this. When we take a look at the book, these etudes seem very daunting and very intimidating, but I want to show you today that they are not intimidating, they are just very helpful for us. So let's dive right in and take a look at number 1. First of all, what is this etude for? What does it help us with? Well, it helps us with bow technique. It helps us with controlling our bow and to play nice, slow legato bows and to control and distribute the bow well. It also helps us in our left hand because we can work on our vibrato and we can work on our intonation. So without further ado, let's take a look at number 1. There you have it. That's number 1. That's the first 2 lines or so. And really what I'm doing is it helps me warm up. It helps me get a good feel for a nice bow stroke. And I feel great after playing it. Let me make another note about these Kreutzer etudes. What makes them intimidating? Well, the etudes are long, they're repetitive. Sometimes towards the end of them, they get really difficult. So, it's a great idea with these just to play a couple of lines of them and work them out. Sometimes, like if I'm practicing one that's difficult and I'm working on it, the first day I'll just go over 1 line or even 1 measure and try to get something out of it. And then the next day I'll go to the next line and see about that, etc., etc. You don't have to practice a lot of them. You can just practice a little morsel of them and try to get something that helps you out of them. Remember, playing etudes is not about going and performing these in public. It's more about finding how we can play our instrument better. You must remember that in order to continue to improve on our instrument. So let's go to number 2. There's no more famous etude than Kreutzer number 2, made famous in part by Jack Benny, who used it as his theme song. So let's take a look at what it sounds like, and then I'm going to talk about how to do some different bowings to help us with our bow technique. Well, that's the first 2 lines of this piece. Now, what do we do to practice this to really help us? Well, I do bowing exercises. So there's a whole set of bowings, but I'm going to put a few of those bowings down in the comments section so that you can see them, but I'm going to make them very simple. The first is 2 notes that are slurred and 2 notes separate. But the way that I practice them is that I put a space between each bow stroke So it's almost a martelé stroke or a hammered stroke. So let me demonstrate that. Like that. Now we can do the opposite, which is 2 notes separate and then 2 notes slurred. Like so. Another way we can do that is to play 1 note separate, 2 notes slurred, and 1 note separate, which we have that bowing a lot in the Suzuki book number 4 in the Vivaldi violin concerto, for instance. But it's a great bowing to practice. Like so. Now, if you noticed, I did not play the beginning of the piece this time because we can always play different measures when we're practicing different bowings to make things interesting, just to mix things up. So that's what I mean. You make these etudes your own and you can just practice 2 measures with a bowing, and that can be something that's really helpful for you. Now, the next logical step here would be to play 3 notes slurred and 1 note separate. So that would look like this. Like so. Now you notice at the end of every one of these, I always end the bow on the string and with a straight bow and then release. So I don't lift the bow until after I finish. I think that's a really good practice. It helps us to sound really elegant when we're playing. The opposite of that is to play 1 note separate and 3 notes slurred. And so on. Now in all of the editions, I use the Schirmer edition, but in all of the editions, there are always a number of bowings that we can use with this, and they are all very helpful. We can go on and on about this etude. You could make 10 different videos, 100 different videos just about this etude. You can spend years doing it, but for now, just think of something like that. So let's go to number 3 in the Kreutzer etudes. Number 3 is very similar to number 2, except it has different notes. So first of all, I learned just the notes and see what they sound like. Like so. You'll notice maybe that when I'm in the higher register, my bow is here, but when I play in the lower register, it's down there because the strings are heavier and it's a little thicker, and as I move down the instrument in pitch, I move the bow down towards the frog so that my sound retains its clarity. So that's just something else to think about, and when I'm playing an etude like this that goes through the range of the viola, I always have that in my mind. So, in the Schirmer edition here, it's wonderful because there are already bowings written in that are varied. So I'm just going to play the bowings in here so you can see that there are different bowings that we can use. Etc. So you can see that gives me help in changing the bowings, and working on my coordination. Now we go to something completely different, and that's number 4, which is a wonderful etude in many ways. At first glance, it's an etude about a bow staccato, but it's much more than that. It's bow distribution, it's bite release, so getting a bite on our sound with a little bit of tension that releases immediately and gets us a nice ringing sound. So the first note that I play in this, I play with a nice long bow with a rich sound, like so. Now, when I do the staccatos, I use my first finger over here, and I make sure that I get a real grip on the bow here so that my bow really sticks to the string and puts clarity on each note. And I work on using as little bow as possible to get that sound. Like so, and then back to the frog with a nice easy stroke, and then I do it again. And then bite, up, and then again. So you'll see that the staccato notes use tiny amounts of bow and only utilize my fingers and my real feel for the bow there. So I'm really getting a feeling of my instrument and trying to figure out how to play as clearly and accurately as possible. So, number 4. Like so. Now you'll notice that's about 2 lines. That's really all I need to work on to get something great out of it. So we make this book our own, and we use it for the purpose of improving our playing. We don't have to play that much. We just have to learn how to make our playing better, step by step. And that is how this book can really, really help us. Going to number 5. Number 5 is very similar to number 2, with the exception that it's in triplets. So we go by groups of 3 or 6 rather than groups of 4. So let me just play the beginning of it just for the notes. Oh, another thing about it, it's in a horrible key. It's in the key of A flat, which is a hard key to play on the viola. So we have to learn how to operate with our fingers in different patterns because of the key. So it's a really good idea just to practice really slowly. Like so, or we can play faster. Like so. Now, just like we had different bowing patterns when we were playing Kreutzer number 2 or number 3, we can do 3-note patterns. So the most obvious is 1 note separate and 2 notes slurred at a time. Or we can do the opposite of 2 notes slurred and 1 note separate. Now, one word about doing bowings like this, where there's 1 separate and 2 slurred, is that we can try really hard to not have the 1 separate be like an accent. In other words, we don't want to do this. try to keep as evenly as possible. So that's a good way to work the flexibility of our bow. So a wonderful etude. Moving on to number 6. Number 6 is all about martelet. Here we're going to go from the middle to the tip, and we're going to stop the bow between each note and look for clarity and bite at the beginning of each note and release. So I practice like this. Which takes a long time to play the whole piece. But remember, you don't have to play the whole piece. So if you just practice that one line and try to make very, very consistently good martelet strokes, you would be in great shape. I hear a lot of people practice this like this. When I hear that, I just think, oh, they're wasting time. Because this piece is great for that bite-release sound and for really working out the clarity in our playing. Someone once told me a great way to practice this, so I want to share that with you. It's that we have a good bite, a grip on the string when we start, and then when we release the bow, we do a little tremolo at the end. Like that. What does that tremolo do? The tremolo is kind of like right on top of the strings. There's hardly any noise there, but what it does is it makes us totally relaxed. So we have tension, relaxation, and then grab again, tension, and the same thing. So that means that my stroke starts with a lot of tension and then it just releases. That is bite, release, bite, release. And that way we get a real feeling for the bow and for the instrument. You can see right here that my bow is totally relaxed when I finish, even though it has a real tension at the beginning of the stroke. And that is so important to practice. In fact, what's it good for? Just on the side, it's really, really great for playing legato to be able to do that, because then I have such control over how much tension I'm giving the bow at any given moment. That it helps us to develop a real flow on the viola. Now, number 7 is great because it goes over a bow stroke that sometimes is overlooked, and that is called the collet. So I play this at the tip, and I start up bow. And on the up bows, I use my fingers this way, and on the down bows, I use them this way. Up bow, down bow. I try to minimize the amount of arm motion that I have, and even wrist motion, and use my fingers for each note. Now, it crosses strings, so a lot of times I'm doing kind of a door open and door close feeling, so it's a rotation over here. So if I'm on the A string, I'm here, D string, G string, C string, etc. So I try to minimize motion except for my fingers. So I can do circles here. Again, the collet stroke can be a whole video in itself. In fact, I do have a video on the collet stroke if you look for it, telling you how to do it. But here's what it looks like. Number 7 with collet. Like so. Now, as I said before, that was 2 measures, and that's enough to practice for a whole day, really. And if I get tired of it, I can go and maybe play the next 2 measures, but this time I'm going to start down bow and go up bow on the second note. So that changes things. So I have to, my beginning posture is like that. So now the next 2 measures, etc. So this is a very, very specific, detailed etude. It's very long. I can tell you I've never played the whole etude. I just play parts of it, very small parts of it, and work it so that I improve my bow technique. There's one other way to practice that which I think is really good. It has a lot of string crossings, as you notice. And what I do is I'll play a martelet stroke, maybe from middle to tip, And when I finish the note, I make sure that I finish the note with my bow on the other string. So my bow will always move during the note to the next string. So the first note's a G here, but the next note is a G there. So at the end of my first stroke, I start on the D string, but at the end of the stroke, I'm on the G string. Now the next note is going to be a B up here on the A string. So when I play the G here, I have to jump over the D string and get to the A string. And when I play this B, the next note is going to be a B on the G string. And so I'm going to have to jump over the D string again, like that. But I'm always prepared to play the next note, like that. So that's another wonderful way to practice this etude. And again, really when I practice this etude, I don't even play the whole first line. I play about 3 measures of it. But I work it very hard to get what I need out of the etude. I'm going to go over one more etude here, and that'll be number 8. And if you like this video, let me know. I will continue, and I'll do the whole book, really. But today we'll just do 8 of them. Number 8 is in groups of 6. It's a great etude. It's very intimidating looking, but if you play it slowly, it's great for left hand, and it's great for right hand. And of course, we can incorporate all of those bowings that are for triples, like for groups of 3 or groups of 6, we can incorporate those bowings, which are actually in the book, and we can just experiment by using different bowings. But I'm just going to play a couple of lines of this. Now, if you get a little bit adventurous, we can try to go faster and see if we can play smoothly and fast, because we're really going along the whole range and feeling the bow move across the string. And I'll just do a couple of the bowings. We'll do 1 separate, 2 slurred. We'll do 2 slurred, 1 separate. Another way to practice it is to go by numbers of bows. So we did it with 1 note per bow. Now I'm going to do it in groups of 6. And now I'm going to do 2 notes slurred and 4 notes separate. Carrying on with 3 notes slurred and 3 notes separate. Carrying on with 4 notes slurred and 2 notes separate. Carrying on with 5 notes slurred and 1 note separate. Well, I kind of forgot what I was doing, but got back into track. And finally, I can do 6 notes slurred. So just as you can see, there's a multitude of ways to do these, and I can make them work for me and do it at my own speed and figure out what it is I can get out of the etude and get everything out of it and improve on my viola skills. So I hope this video was helpful. Again, please let me know. I would love to do a whole set of the Kreutzer etudes. This was, I guess, would be volume 1. So this is number 1 through 8, just a quick idea of how to practice and what each of these etudes can help us with. Until I see you the next time, happy practicing.